We're following breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ in college football, where Arch Manning has committed to Texas. Manning, a five-star recruit. He's the #1 player in the class of 2023. Just visited Austin this past weekend, following trips to Georgia and Alabama earlier this month, and that was enough. He has landed with the Texas Longhorns and Coach Steve Sarkisian. Big get for Sark, who goes into his second season with the Longhorns. And for Manning, you take a look at the overall rankings for the 2023 class. I mean, in 3 seasons at Isidore Newman, he's passed for over 6,300 yards. He's had 742 yards rushing. He's thrown 81 touchdowns and run for another 19 touchdowns. So you can see why he is top of the class. All right, for more on this, let's go out to our guys at 24/7 Sports, Josh Pate and Bud Elliott. Gentlemen, I'll start. Just your reaction. Continue the conversation as Arch Manning commits to Texas.
Yeah, Jeremy, Bud, just when you thought it was safe to say the word vacation, here we go. It's the middle of June, and Arch Manning to Texas. There are several different ways that we can go with this. So let's just start with overall, this is going to send ripple effects throughout the entirety of college football. Georgia was in this, Alabama was in this, but ultimately, you probably agree with me. I don't know that there was any program out there that thought they needed Arch Manning more than the University of Texas, and they got him.
Correct. Steve Sarkisian's first year at Texas last year did not go particularly well on the field. And they did have a strong recruiting class, but just in terms of jump-starting a program, Texas has won national titles in our lifetime, but they haven't done so recently, whereas Alabama and Georgia have. Getting a guy like Arch Manning, who is the top recruit of all time in terms of fame, notoriety, it's just so big for Texas recruiting, for Sarkisian's tenure there at Texas, as they matriculate to the SEC in the coming years. You just can't overstate how big this is.
Yeah, I don't think it should be lost, by the way. We're talking all the time in the future tense about OU, but about Texas and about that eventual move to the SEC. One of the questions, as recently as last week, I had it asked on my show, I know you guys on Cover 3 have talked about it a lot, is how much bump may you see in recruiting going from the Big 12 to the SEC? Well, if this is an early indication, Texas handled themselves very well in this recruitment. They went up against SEC heavyweights. And it's such a huge deal because it signifies not only are we going to be serious at quarterback for the foreseeable future, and they had gone out and gotten Quinn Ewers in the transfer portal as well, but as you well know, covering recruiting at the micro level, this is such a big deal for complementary players, perimeter skill players, running backs, but you may even have corners and safeties that want to play with Arch Manning.
Can you imagine being a class of 2023 recruit? And I know Arch Manning isn't big on social media, at least right now, although he did tweet out his commitment today. You're going to take that call if Arch Manning calls you and say, hey, I know you're committed to Alabama. I know you're committed to Georgia. I turn those schools down. Come check out what Texas has to offer. It's Arch Manning. He's the most famous recruit of all time, our #1 overall player in the class. And that Texas offense, Josh, is going to be dynamite. Because let's go back just 5-6 months ago now to when Texas signed the #1 offensive line class in the country. When Arch arrives on campus, that offensive line class will be second-year players. That's going to be a great line to play behind.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting documentaries, if you could really get all access on this recruitment, would have been the negative recruiting pitch, if there was one, against Texas. Because you have proven results at Alabama. Georgia now has proven results, and they could probably sell him on, hey, and we haven't even had a quarterback of your caliber yet. Whereas at Texas, there's a lot of new. There's a lot of fresh out of the wrapper. You can still smell the newness on the program. And there's a lot of remains to be seen there. But when Steve Sarkisian came in, I just wonder, what was the tipping point? What was that final domino? Was it, here's what I did with Mac Jones? Was it, come make your own legacy here instead of being part of something that's already been established? But at the very least, when you talk about the heavyweight recruiting battles that are still to come for Texas, boy, you'll look back on this one for a long time and say that may be where it started.
Let's go back to the hiring of David Cutcliffe by Texas, right? It's my belief that the Mannings probably got their blessing from Cutcliffe about Sark's offense. To me, there's some questions about Steve Sarkisian as the head coach. I think those are fair, but there are no questions about his ability to run a great offense and put up points. And clearly the Mannings value Cutcliffe's input a lot. Remember, he was Peyton's offensive coordinator at the University of Tennessee, and he was Eli's head coach at Ole Miss. So if you're an offensive player, there's really no downside to going to play for Texas.
Yeah. We'll have a lot of coverage of this and more things on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel today, but I kind of wanted to look ahead now. Texas is coming into this season. In one hand, they're listed among the favorites in the Big 12. I think the over-under at Caesars right now is 9 in the win total category. Do you think, if anything, there's some importance on this year, giving a proven result on the field that may impact not just Arch Manning, but other commitments that could very well hinge on how the Horns do on the field this fall?
I think it is important that Texas not necessarily win the Big 12 this year, but I think it's important that they at least show some progress. You don't want to give Arch Manning a reason to decommit. And not that I think he would. I think that family's been very deliberate about their process. They've been pretty buttoned up. It has not been a media circus, despite our best efforts to make it one. But if they were to go 6-6 or something, you might have some serious doubts about Sark's future there in Austin. So I do think it's important that Texas, at the very least, contend for the Big 12. Be in the race to make it to the Big 12 title game in those final weeks. Show some real progress. Give Arch Manning a reason to believe that thing really is on track with his health.
Yeah, Jeremy, one more thing to remember as we wrap it up here on our end. This is the transfer portal era. And so now and moving forward, if you're Texas, and not only this year, but in the coming years, you're trying to get in that portal and maybe you want to pull off a duplicate of getting Isaiah Nayer like they did from Wyoming this past year. They want to get a compliment to a Bijan Robinson once he heads off to the NFL. Boy, it sure makes it a whole lot more attractive when you can go out there and say, oh, by the way, we've got this guy named Arch Manning. Have you ever heard of him? For Bud Elliott, Josh Pate here. We'll have plenty more coverage on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel all afternoon. Until then, back to you guys.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate the input. Certainly a big day for the University of Texas, the Longhorns fans. And, of course, as Josh mentioned, they're going to be talking about this all day long over on their YouTube channel. You can also follow Late Kick with Josh Pate Thursdays and Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, live on YouTube and Facebook.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.